All right, everyone. My guest tonight is a longtime friend who's got a new novella out, who's kind of gone on to some new endeavors. You know him as author of The Body Man. Eric Bishop, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Sporting the Magnum colors
Yep.
for the podcast season right
Looks
now.
good. Looks good, man. And the cover behind you over your left shoulder there looks excellent as well. I believe that's the hardcover edition. You probably can't tell on camera, but it's a very solid edition. It came out pretty well off of Amazon.
Pretty. I'm going with the word sexy. I was actually quite surprised. I will say I ordered. I knew I was going to do ebook and paperback for Ransomed Daughter, and it's a novella, so it's not. It's going to change a little bit from this form. But we're at, let's see, this one. This was the advanced copy before the edits. So we're at like 158 pages. So it'll probably end up in the low 160 range for pages. So not a full, not a full length novel, not quite a half, a little less than half of a novel. Um, but I didn't know if hardcover was going to be an option, so I designed one and ordered one just to see, and it was quite surprising. I really like the hardcover very much, so very pleased.
So a lot has kind of gone on since we've last been on here. We talk all the time, but since we've last been on here and people have kind of got a chance to hear from you, been a lot of changes that have kind of gone on in your publishing journey, to include a very recent change that has put you in a position to kind of take a little more control.
Mm-hmm.
In simple words, kind of fill us in on what has been going on and kind of why it's led to where you got a new endeavor going on now.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so Bodyman came out in 2021, and summer of 22, I submitted the second book in the series, Breach of Trust. Um, Found out in November the publisher uh, basically rejected it, wanted me to pretty much make a lot of changes or rewrite the book completely. Um, and just hit that spot of, man, I believed in what I wrote. And I mean, sometimes that can be detrimental. People like are arrogant about what they write, and they say nobody can tell me what to do.
Sure.
I did a perfect first draft. What are you talking about? And that was not the case. Um, I knew the book needed some editorial help, absolutely, but I believed in the story I crafted, and I had several people who I trust. Yourself being one of them. I
Yep.
have several beta readers, and the thing with the beta readers, I always tell people, mine have been very honest and open with me, is give me a straight view of what you're reading. Don't blow smoke and say, boy, Eric, that's the best thing you ever wrote. And it's crap because you're just doing me a disservice.
Yeah.
Um, so the universal comments I had got back from Breach of Trust was better than The Body Man, like significantly better story. And I thought The Body Man was a good story.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I believed it was a significantly better story. So I thought I was on the right path. So with the publisher not believing in it, which absolutely they're right not to me, it wasn't worth rewriting the book for the publisher. Maybe if it was a big publisher, maybe if it's Penguin or Simon Schuster said, "Hey, you failed on this one, rewrite it, and here's where we think you should fix it," um, and they had given me a chunk of money, then probably a different conversation. But with a smaller publisher, it just wasn't worth my time or effort to rewrite a book I believed in. So, short story would be I parted ways with the publisher and got the rights back for Breach of Trust. So, at that point, it kind of opens up a diverging path. You can take that book and try to get someone else to pick it up and publish it. Um, I guess there's three paths. You can publish it yourself, or you can just say it's not going to happen. It's very hard for the first path. It's very hard to have another publisher, whether it's a small or big publisher, come in after the fact and take an existing series,
Yeah.
unless that first book or second or third, whatever had come out before that, unless those were very highly profitable. Then publishing is just what it is, a business.
Hmm.
And then they'll want to talk to you. And the Body Man did well. My sales very pleased. Um, but not at a level where I could go to, an agent and a big publisher and say, "Hey, you want breach of trust?" Or I don't believe so. And I didn't pursue it, didn't even try to. I believed in the story, so I didn't want to let it go. So I decided, you know what? Option three is, what do I have to do to put it out myself? Um, and in the meantime, to do that, there's a lot of setup, a lot of work to do. I had several other things done that needed some fine tuning, but I could get them out quicker than I could breach of trust. And also
Right.
with breach of trust, I thought it was best that I just put it aside and take the emotion out of it. Because anytime someone rejects something you write, I don't care. At least I would think for the most part, most people, if someone rejects what you write, it's a blow. It sucks. And I said, I'm going to put it aside and just look at it with fresh eyes 6 months from now, which is what I basically did. I just put breach of trust aside. So that was November, December last year, and I didn't touch it until the spring, late in the spring, before I looked at it again. And when I looked at it again, I'm like, no, I was right. This is a good story, and I've thought of some ways to change it. So I've got some changes in there. I'm rewriting some of the beginning of the book, just from how my imagination has changed in the last year from when I wrote that first draft. Um, but in the meantime, how this came into existence was, I also know that whether it's a business. So whether this business is a small business, small self-publishing, or it's a big business, you can't not put something out for a long period of time. Typically,
Yeah.
that's just, you're going to lose your audience. And Ransom Daughter is something I had written quite a while ago, along with full-length novels that feature Troy Evans, my main protagonist. And Ransom Daughter was a great story at the time when I wrote it, and so I pulled that up back in probably January, February, in that time frame, and I reread through it a couple times and just wanted to, like, does it hold up? Was it written well? And I saw quite a lot of things to fix because I've changed as a writer. So I immediately dived in and just started rewriting it. I added probably close to 8 to 10,000 words. It was smaller at the time. I changed some characters around. Some of the settings got changed, some of the description, and a lot of stuff. So not brand new, but just a revamped novella. And then I started handing it out to people like yourself, and again, my trusted group of people that just give me a straight, from the horse's mouth, how did I do? And
Yeah.
again, the feedback was, yeah, dude, put this out. So that's been about a 6 month endeavor to go in and create this self publishing. And I'm not hiding the fact that I'm self publishing, but just instead of putting something out under my name, I wanted a legal entity to protect myself. And I decided I'd try to put something out with an actual brand and see if, maybe if it's successful, maybe down the road, maybe I can offer that service to other authors. Um, I'll only do that if I feel like it's a venture that's going to benefit them. That's the other thing you got to be really careful about if you're on the fence whether you self-publish or go with a small publisher or go with a big publisher. Is see what's in your best interest,
Yeah.
because clearly, like a big publisher, if you're a no name, you're not probably going to get a lot of marketing. I think people think that, well, if I just get a big publisher, that'll take care of that. Most of the problems will be taken care of. They'll market and all that. No,
No, they're going to take care of their money makers. You got to prove yourself.
you have to prove yourself. So you're going to be doing just as much shilling as
Oh
I
yeah.
am. Putting
Yeah.
yourself out. I mean, you're gonna have to put yourself out there a lot. Now, what a big publisher will get you is distribution, for the most part. So you'll be able to possibly have your book in Barnes and Noble and places, and you won't have to do anything to facilitate that. I can do the same thing now for myself, but I have to facilitate all that. I have to do a lot of
Yeah, sure.
legwork, get a lot of doors closed in my face. And then, of course, the option of going with an indie press, small publisher. And that's a generic term in a way, because you have some small publishers that might be just one person
Yeah.
acting like they're a publisher, and you might have a small publisher that's got a staff of 20 or 30 or 40, or that has a decent staff. They're just not the big, they're not the
Yeah.
big Simon Schuster and all that. So when it comes to that, you just have to be really careful who you sign with. Ask a lot of questions, and especially if you're going to go the small press route, the question I think you need to ask yourself is, what can that small publisher do that you can't do on your own, through self-publishing? Do they have better distribution than you can have? Do they have better marketing? Do they have better editorial?
Yeah.
Um, And so that's a pretty important question to ask for all the authors out there: is what can that person do better than you can? Now,
Yeah.
I'll take one quick step back and say, maybe as a writer, all you want to do is write. You don't want to start your own company. You don't have to do any marketing. Um, if you can find a small publisher that will do all that stuff for you, or a big publisher, but I'll just focus on small publishers. If you can find someone that will do all that for you for free, they'll take probably the majority of your money, of course, the majority of the royalties. But you want to go that route, God bless you. Nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, because if you do decide to do it yourself, you're it. You can invest a little, or you can invest a lot. Depends on what you want.
Well, and
And then you,
do your homework too. There's plenty of self-published authors out there that have found great success, but they learned the Facebook ads, the Amazon ads, they learned the
right.
algorithm, and they came up with a marketing strategy to hit all those things. And they probably paid some professionals to write them some blurbs for ads, and like you said,
Mhm.
you're going to have to invest. However, $100 here, $100 there, but it's done correctly. So instead of selling 5 books off of that ad, you sell 25.
Right.
It's a big difference. And that's a big difference. Sooner or later, that $100 that you invested disappears because
Hmm.
you roll down a return. And I think that's important to note, is that it's not impossible. A lot of people think, like you said, you get this big publishing deal and then it's all good. They got a publicist who's going to hook you up and all that. Well, you're not going to be the top priority at
Yeah.
Simon and Schuster with Brad Thorne, Jack Carr.
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
you might get some special attention there for a little while, but until you give them valid reason to move one of them out of the way and give you more time in the spotlight, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you got to prove it. So
Yeah.
you can either prove it to them or prove it to yourself. I think that kind of control you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, and that's one thing. So right now I'm at that, probably I'm not overwhelmed. Definitely not overwhelmed. I just want to make sure I'm not missing key stuff. So I've got a pretty detailed checklist of things I'm going through and have to still go through, because I still have a good 6 weeks before publication. So I still have time to get a lot of the nitty gritty details worked out. But
Yeah.
having that ability to decide where you're going to put your focus,
Yeah.
what the cover is going to look like, whatever it might be. And for what I did was, my abilities with this are to write a good story. I think I'm pretty good at marketing. I know there's probably much better people out there, but I know I've got the ability to come out and express myself and to sell a product. What I can't do is I can't design a cover. I'm not a cover designer, so I hired someone to do a cover. Um, I can't professionally edit a story. Grammarly is not good enough, in my opinion, for me
Oh yeah.
to
No, it's not. And this is
Grammarly a
stuff.
book and put it up.
Yeah.
So I hired a professional editor. So those are the kind of things that just outsource. And I think you need to, that's a good thing for authors to remember too, is try to stay as best you can in your lane. Do
Hmm.
what you're really good at and what's not your specialty. If you have the financial means or you have the ability, outsource that to someone that can handle that for you. Um,
But don't
and
go
again,
cheap.
sometimes people,
Like don't try to cut so many corners that you know, like you said, you got to kind of decide where you're going to invest. You need a good story. So you got to invest in the editor. You got to invest in the cover because it's got to grab people. And then
yeah,
after that, the PR, the marketing and things like that, don't necessarily cut corners and go cheap and think, oh, it's still going to work.
right, exactly.
Don't shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. I'm still one question. One question came up today. Actually, someone was asking is, what about, because I will. So right now, the only thing for pre-order available is the ebook.
Right.
If people want to go out and pre-order the ebook, I I'm glad to have them do it. If they want to wait and they want a paper copy or a hardcover, which will, a paperback and hardcover will both be available on October 10th. I totally don't blame them for waiting till October 10th to get that physical copy. I hope Amazon changes it at some point. Some of the other markets do let you pre-order. I probably might get there in the next week or so. I'm still doing the setup for some of that stuff. And to me, the pre-orders aren't as important as they maybe are for someone that's trying to like make the bestseller list or something like that. Unless unless something miraculous happens, I'm not hitting any bestseller lists, and I'm okay with that. That's that time will come when it's supposed to happen. I'm just going to try to get this story out to as many folks as I can, introduce them to Troy Evans and the Omega Group the best to my ability, and keep hustling. So, but the question came about audiobook today, even, and I'm looking into it. I've got some proposals out there I'm looking at. Um, is it viable? Is it viable for an audiobook? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Especially for a novella. The
Yeah,
pricing, for 150 pages as opposed to 400.
right. Well, and what I've learned a lot about it. I will say, in the last week, I didn't really dig into it until about the last week, and so I've spent many hours now, kind of figuring out. And the other cool thing about all this, and obviously you and I talk outside the podcast a lot, is the author community is hands down the most amazing people you're ever going to meet in your life. There's no competition. It's not Jeff calling Eric up and saying, "Hey, buddy, what did you do for this?" And me saying, "Screw you, Jeff. I'm not going to tell you anything. Figure it out. You got Amazon, you got Google."
Yeah.
No, no, doesn't work that way. So I've had a bunch of questions about audiobooks. And so I've reached out to people like Joe Goldberg and Emma Adair, people that have gone down that path. And they're amazing people. They're generous. Say, "Hey, you need to look at this. Here's some videos here to watch. This is what I did. This is what I shouldn't have done." It's really, and authors do that for each other in so many ways
Hmm.
that it's a really cool group to be part of, and knowing that you have that resource, and also those people knowing that you're not just trying to take from them, you want to help them with their endeavor as well. And that's, it's a give and take where, we're in it to help each other.
Hmm.
And that's why, like with doing these podcasts, and I talk about some of my experiences, whether it might be with the small publisher or what I'm learning now from doing it myself. Man, if I can help someone else, um, maybe prevent them from going down a path that's going to be hard, I'm going to try to do that. A lot of times you have to learn it on your own, because I've been told a lot of things in life and didn't listen, and then realized, oh, yeah, my parents were right about that. What do you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
so sometimes you're going to struggle on your own and then figure it out. But if I can help someone ahead of time and say, "Hey," even that, it's not a telling them what to do. It's telling them, "Hey, watch for this." Watch for, again, what can someone do that you can't do yourself. And if you say, "Well, I have a full-time job, I write at night, I've got young kids, I can't do anything but write stories." Okay, well, that probably will rule out self-publishing for you. So you're probably going to have to either go with a smaller publisher or someone that you're going to invest money with, to do it for you, or a big publisher. Um, and that's something that each person just kind of has to figure out on their own, obviously.
Yeah. So let's talk about Ransomed Daughter. You said you wrote this a while back, kind of pulled it out of the mothballs, blew the dust off of it, and kind of
Yeah.
revamped it. Let's talk kind of about how much did the premise change compared to then to now in its kind of its final form?
Not dramatically. The title never changed. So it's always been a story about a daughter that was up for ransom. So the high level concept didn't change. It was more the details. I don't even remember what year I wrote it. It wasn't many, many years ago, but it wasn't a year or two ago. So it was several years back. I had a couple books under my belt before I wrote it, but they didn't get published. So clearly I wasn't onto something yet. Um, but it was the story that resonated with me, and in the character of Troy Evans is what resonated with me. So that's the first, not the first character I've created, but it was the first character I turned into a protagonist for a full length novel, and I really I really liked that character. And yeah, I would hope if you write a character, you really like your character. But something about that character when I created him just resonated with me. And I put some of my probably emotions in how when I believe in something, I'm all into it. I put some of that into that character, so I had this connection with that character, and I had a few people in my close network that had read the early novels that never went anywhere. They didn't get published or get an agent to sign with. And over after several years, they'd kind of bring it up to me and say, "Hey, when are you going to do something with Troy? He's a great character." And I kind of heard that over and over. And so when I had this gap this year where I knew I wasn't ready to put Breach of Trust out, but I felt like I needed to put something out, I knew that late last year, January of this year. I'm like, man, how do I get Troy out there and give him a little? It's just a taste. He is the main protagonist in the story, but you don't get the full exposure of who he is because
Hmm.
obviously with a novella, I've got a small window to tell a story. So I don't
Yeah.
have the luxury of doing a lot of the development I might normally get to do. So, um, yeah,
But that's
so
what
it's not
novellas are
changed
for. They're kind of a tease. They're kind
exactly.
of a gaps between stories. Brad Taylor does it really well, and he does a lot of different short stories and novellas where it's filling in the gaps in between the bigger books and kind of telling a little bit more about something else. And that's exactly what you're doing here. You're introducing Troy and Omega Group, and it
Yeah.
kind of leaves it open for like, hey, what are you gonna do with them next? And I think it's really cool the way you did it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from someone who I respect.
Well, thank you.
I don't want to give much away, but one of the themes in here, especially hits it later, is Troy, and it's in one of the novels I wrote, and it probably will see the light of day. I thought a couple years ago, all those early novels I wrote will probably just sit on a hard drive, and maybe I'll print them off one day. People have read them, so I have printed off copies, but like they're not going to go anywhere. But I wanted them to, and now that I'm opening up this can of worms, I guess I can choose to have that ability to fix them and do the same thing I'm doing with Ransomed Daughter and put them out for people. And Troy is a cool character. He's a flawed character. Most characters are. He's not Superman. He doesn't get shot, and then in the next chapter, he's skydiving with Tom Cruise. They're not doing halo jumps in the next chapter or anything. He's I'd say he's a regular guy, you and I, but I didn't serve. I wasn't a Green Beret like Troy was, and I couldn't do half the stuff he does. But I know people like Troy,
Yeah.
like friends that have served that did roles similar to his. So I know there's a lot of Troy Evans guys out there that are just kind of really solid soldiers that are good at what they do, but they're not the mythical guy that can run through a hail of bullets and just like get that lead off my shoulder.
Hmm.
I wanted to make him like an everyday guy, but also a little bit of a badass everyday guy for sure. Um, but a theme that's running through the novella, of course, is that there is a romantic background there, romantic figure that is was lost to another story that not lost, alive, but it didn't work out, and it's always haunted him. It's the one that got away, I guess is how I should describe it. So that definitely comes up in the story, and yeah, just he's a fun character. I probably because it was the first novel I wrote and because of the connection, it's like I've got unfinished business, I guess I could say, with
Yeah.
Troy. And so to know that I can start putting him out there and then maybe I'll get, maybe it'll sell well, maybe it'll grow. And maybe at some point a bigger publisher will be like, hey, we want to talk to you. I'd love to get that world of his because there's 3 novels that are done. I will say that. There's 3 completed novels. There's a couple other stories. Then there's Ransom Daughter. But I planned 7 when I started the first book. And it was very high level. And then I kind of delved into it as I got into the second and third book and really started kind of putting a summary together of all, book 4, 5, 6, and 7. It was interesting. I'll just tell this. I know I talk a little bit anyways, but um, I was pitching one of the novels at Thriller Fest early on. One of my first second time I think I went to Thriller Fest, first or second, I don't remember. And one of the agents, I was telling him about the story, and he was kind of interested, but I said, well, then I got the second book done. I think it was the first book because then I said I got the second book done and the third, and I'm working on the third, and there'll be 7. And he stopped me. He's like, and I'll never forget. I remember this agent looked like, and I'll always remember his name. I'll never say what his name was, but He was like, "Wait, what?" I said, "Well, I've planned for this to be 7 books." And he looked at me and he goes, how do you have the gall to think you could do 7 books? And it was one of those moments that struck me that I'm like, how could you not? I mean, if you're going to get into this and write and take it serious, how do you not look down the line of where you're going to go with these characters? So to me, that was kind of, I knew immediately, and he passed. I didn't have very many people pass on that first story. They eventually passed, but like they were willing to at least take a sample. He didn't want to touch it after I said 7. And I'm glad he didn't, because I probably wouldn't have sent it to him, because I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I don't want to talk to you. You're not the right agent for me. It was an interesting experience, but that's how much time and effort I'd put into Troy for multiple years of my writing. My first 3.5 to 4 years of writing were all not just Troy. There was other characters, but Troy was he was my Mitch Rapp without having as much crazy experiences happen to him. I guess you could say.
So let's talk a little bit about the Omega Group, because you kind of introduced them in this
Yes.
novella, and it's going to be kind of a centerpiece of some of the future works that you have. And
Yes.
we've kind of discussed a really cool marketing strategy that you're going to potentially use, which I think will really make it a very interesting ordeal. But what's the Omega Group, and how'd you kind of come up with them?
Yeah. So other authors have done something similar to this, so it's I'm definitely not completely recreating the wheel. But what I wanted to do when I was first telling those stories, and what Ransomed Daughter, how that came out of those original stories, was I wanted to have a team of 6 guys. So I had a good buddy that was part of fifth group. Actually, it's up there. It's a little bit out of reach, but his ODA numbers and everything's on the coin. But they obviously had 12 men group in his ODA. But sometimes for things you split up into 6. And I like the fact that you'd have this specialty group of 6 guys that could work together and do these amazing things. And I never did them, but my friend did them. And I'd hear a lot of stories. And he'd come back from deployments and he showed me pictures of Iraq and Afghanistan and later in his career, Syria. It got my interest in saying, well, what if I had some characters like that? But what if we could take that characters, and what if we could pull them out of the big army? And what if we could use them for some highly specialized missions, or to help in situations that go wrong, like say, I don't know, a ransom, a kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, their designation is the Omega Group, and they essentially function outside of the big army's hierarchy. They have a superior officer, and the superior officer has someone he reports to, but they're given a lot of latitude on what they do. And, with that being a small group, they're able to move them around a lot easier, and they don't have to deal with the red tape.
And where do you see Troy Evans and the Omega Group going in the upcoming years? Now that you kind of have a little more control over the storytelling, what do you think you're going to do with them?
Yeah, so what I had written earlier, the first book I had written focused a lot on Troy and the Omegas. The second one kind of got away from that at some point, and Troy actually went down a different path. There was still connection with the group and still worked with them on stuff, but there had been some changes. But there are multiple stories like Ransom Daughter of just basically the Omega Group. And actually, the book that I'm planning to do probably tentatively be out next fall. I don't have the date yet. That one, I'm loosely using the word the Omega Group as the book title. I might change that as I dig more into it and kind of it's about around 70,000 words. So that one needs probably about another 10, 15. It needs some cleanup, needs some work. Again, it was written it was a while back. So it needs that updating that I had to do, like with Ransom Daughter. But it's a really cool story. So that one is kind of, again, it's introduces the team more, because it's a lot bigger it's a novel. It has that opportunity to go into their backstory of how they formed, how they got how they got recruited, and there's some some funny stories of how each guy was chosen and all that kind of stuff, and even the backstory of how the guys got into the military. Why did they join the army? Because I wanted to create, which is really, in my understanding of knowing guys that have served, is it's not just one set group of people that decide to serve their country. You get people from all kinds of backgrounds.
Yes. Yeah, you
Um,
do.
One of my characters, which obviously you're one of the few that's read the advanced version of it, is Jesus Soto, from East LA. He was in a gang before he joined the military. He
Mhm.
was not a good guy. He actually had a moment of faith that really switched his mindset from being just not a good guy to like, okay, I need to actually serve a higher purpose, not even the military. I need to serve a higher purpose in my life than to be a dirtbag drug dealer. Again, one of those characters that I loved writing because he had a redemption story, and I gravitate towards stuff like that because no matter who we are in this life, it's easy to get down the wrong path. It's easy to make the wrong decision. Um, the question is can you reverse course? Now, some things you do are going to have consequences that you can't reverse.
Yeah.
Um, but I do believe in, the term salvation. I believe that people can change. We're not just, you're not always that round peg,
Hmm.
you can be square. You can change. There's things about people that can change, and the question is, do you want to? And I think for a lot of people, they don't. They fall into a certain thing and they get stubborn. And that's the cool thing about being able to write is you can create your characters and you can put them in situations, and then you can kind of play with what direction do they go or do they change. So it's fun, as you well know as a writer. It's a great way to have an outlet in life, and
Oh
it's a
yeah.
blessing to be able to do it.
Especially when, it's unpublished. So you're not really concerned with approval. You're
Right.
concerned with writing the story, getting it down on paper, and you're focused on that creative side. Um,
Hmm.
the approval part and seeking approval and seeking a deal and all that, it comes later. But
Right.
the initial getting it down on paper, and I think even established artists. I know I was talking to Andrews and Wilson last night, and they kind of said the same thing. Like it's about getting the story. It's about Jeff and Brian working together and coming up with this awesome story, and then they worry about, um, you know, what the publisher is going to think and what the editor is going to think, and
Right.
they worry about that kind of after the fact, and it's that moment for them that's so important.
Yeah. Well, and and I know Brian and Jeff. They were super encouraging to me years ago at Thriller Fest, and we've interacted since then. And a couple things. First of all, I know that they probably would feel the same way of me saying or speaking for them. And you have to get a first draft out. So you come
Yeah.
up with a story, you come up with an idea. Your job is to tell that story. You
Yes.
can't fix something that you haven't gotten completed.
Right.
Not completed as in it's done, you put the bow on it, but completed as in, hey, first draft is done. Now you can go in and go, my goodness, what did I write? This is
Yeah.
horrible. Why
Write
did
your
I put?
130,000 words and then send it to some guys chapters at a time. Say, read this and let them
Exactly.
say, hey, these three paragraphs don't make any sense. Why,
Right.
or it's kind of in reverse order because then you can cut. You can cut
Yes.
and you can mold and you can shape. And that's exactly what I did. I sent the
You
first
did.
100 pages out to a bunch of people and I got multiple opinions. Yep. From you, Ama Adair, several others, and some consistent feedback and some, stuff that people didn't catch that
Right.
others did. But, that's the
Right.
point. And I cut some stuff. And I trimmed some things and kind of shuffled things around a little bit and
Hmm.
you get a more polished version. But I think that's the point is to take it in steps. Get it done, get it on paper, then start reading, start sending it out, start getting feedback, and then start polishing. And this, of course, it's never going to be done because anybody who's anybody, self-published or not, or big published, you're going to get editor. So the
Hmm.
editor is going to kind of be almost that final say And even like you've it's gone to the editor, and you're still going back through and just double checking to make
I,
sure because you want it to be polished. It's never done
I
though.
I literally changed some dialogue last night on
Yeah.
a finished manuscript that I paid someone to edit. I paid an editor to make sure I didn't jack things up, and I was messing with it last night. And I reread those lines multiple times. I let Grammarly go through them a couple times, and I'm like, does that make sense?
No, you're
Did
never
I just
done.
did I just screw something up that someone's gonna be like, what the heck does that mean?
It's never
So
done. It's never done until it's in print form and it's starting to, people are paying for it. Then it's done. Then you
right.
can't that by that point in time you can't do nothing about it.
Well, and then yeah, and then you can't do anything about it, and that's the beauty of this. So you have your whole life, quote unquote, to write your first book, and but man, once that book's out, especially if you get a publishing deal, you got months to write to have your second book ready to go.
Yeah.
Your time frame, but you have to accept the fact that once it's there, it's there.
Mhm.
And that was for me with the Body Man. Once I gave it to the publisher, and all that entailed, it got to a point where it wasn't my story anymore in the
Mhm.
sense that I couldn't make any changes. It was then uploaded to all the sites, and um, it bothers you a little bit, or bothered me a little bit, but I got over it extremely quickly. And like, and related to the Body Man, I've never, besides referencing a couple things for breach of trust, I've never gone back and looked at it again. And that was one thing that I had an author tell me that years ago, that they don't go back and read the books after they got published.
Oh yeah, I
And
won't.
well, when I first heard that and interacted with this person who, the local author I used to get together and have lunch with and stuff, when I lived closer to more in the mountains, um, I was almost incensed. Like, why would you not read your book? Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
I will probably in my life, I will never go back and reread The Body Man. Never, never read it
Yeah.
again.
I don't think I'd read mine either.
Um, yeah,
It's
and
just I'm done
I'm
with
o-
it. It's not that I
I'm
don't
okay
care
with
for
it.
it anymore, but there's got to be a point in time where you're done. You're done with that
Exactly.
story and you're moving on. Like you said, you
Yeah,
might reference it from time or two, but um, yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think there are people who do that, and I think that's perfectly fine if they want to do that. But I don't. I think for multiple reasons, I wouldn't go
yeah.
back and reread my published stuff. Not for my own pleasure, for sure.
I've got one or two more passes because the Ransom Daughter's got about 6 weeks, and I'm gonna order some more advanced copies probably tomorrow night, just to make sure I don't have any hidden things that I missed, the editor missed, or whatever. And I'll go through it again myself, and then I'll see what feedback I get from them, and then maybe go through it one more time. But I'm probably looking at two more passes, and I'll never read it again, probably. Um, I'll reference it. I will sign as many as people want to buy, and it will mean a whole heck of a lot to me every time I sign it. It's never an auto like, oh yeah, here's my signature, great, just buy a copy.
Yeah,
No,
it's
absolutely
definitely
not.
surreal. You're
Yeah,
putting that signature on that first page or so, that header page, and it's just kind of like I'm signing a book. I'm signing my
yeah.
book that somebody else wants. Like they're trusting me with their money and their time.
I
You know.
signed a copy of the Body Man 2 weeks ago on a first date. Someone I met with, and halfway through the date, I realized there wouldn't be a second date, and we had already talked about giving her a book, and I still went to the car after the date and gave her a book, and I handed it to her, and she's like, "Are you going to sign it and personalize it?" And I was like, uh, "You want me to?" She wanted me to, but guess what? I did. It There might not have been another date, but guess what? It was still cool to sign the book. To have your signature on a book, I wanted that for years.
Yeah.
So to get to that spot where I can do that and I can sign books, again, maybe if you sell 100,000 or 500,000 or 1 million copies and you sign them all, and maybe that gets really old at some point, and I hope I can sell enough to get to whatever that number is that it gets old, but I don't think so. Signing a book is still an amazing experience,
Yeah.
and it's an honor. It's an honor to get to do it because you know that imposter syndrome kicks in. First of all, when you write something, like that's probably not very good, but also when someone says, "Hey, will you sign this book for me?" I want to be like, I'm a nobody, right? Why do you want my signature?
Yeah.
Um,
People don't
but I
care.
get it. I get
Yeah.
it from a fan perspective because when I go to a book signing, and I've met several times, and I, loosely internet wise, I know Brad Meltzer, and we exchange messages and stuff. Tell you what, I got probably 6 or 7 books signed by Brad Meltzer. Every single one is stinking cool, even though I already have one. Even though he's left some amazing notes to me inside those books that I cherish, still cool to get that.
Oh yeah.
So as a fan, so I try to take that in account as I'm signing it, of going, hey, this is amazing for me to get to sign it, and this person is asking for it. How cool is that? That's super cool.
So by the time people hear this, Ransomed Daughter will be out in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. This is going to drop in September. October 10th is what we're looking at for the release. What is kind of next after the October 10th release? What are you going to start working on?
Yeah, so as soon as I can flip my brain, I have 2 things. First of all, I'm working on a project that I've hinted at, that I still am just hinting at, that is not just me. I'm working on something with someone else, and it is a true collaboration. Sometimes there's collaborations that are 99% one person and 1% the other person. This is a true collaboration project that's not gotten the attention it needs. And the person's been very cool with me in knowing that Ransom Daughter's just taken up a lot of time in the last 4 to 6 months. And they're really amazing person. They're like, hey, you get Ransom Daughter out, then we'll jump back on board. So I've written some in this time, but I've not written enough. So I'm going to try to really put a lot of focus on that. And then I need to also, I'll have to do a double duty, split my time, and I need to get back into the breach of trust world. And I need to do some more rewriting for that. I'd like to get that in the hands of the editor by early 2024 so that we can hit the deadline I've set in my brain of when I want it to come out, which I've not revealed yet. But if I can pull all this off, Ransom Daughter will drop on October 10th of this year. And then sometime before too late next year, Breach of Trust will come out, which is the follow up to The Body Man, which a lot of people have been asking about. And also, probably more towards the fall, winter is when the Omega Group, which is kind of not a follow up, but a continuation of these characters in Ransom Daughter. So, and one thing, since we're there, and since we're going to be close to going public or going to a published date, um, and I'm not the one to reinvent doing this, and I fully know that. But people have been really cool with me because I was pitching or promoting Breach of Trust, long before I should have been, and I was super. Part of it was there wasn't any nefarious reasoning behind that, as I really thought it was going to get published, possibly late last year, early this year. That was my goal all along, and I thought I wrote something that was good enough to make that happen. Life happens. Publisher didn't see it that way. No
Yeah.
problem.
It was good enough. Let's put this on the record. It was a good story. It still is a good story. There was a disagreement that, I frankly disagree with it too.
That's okay.
I think
it's for the
both,
better.
yeah, it's for the better, but it was definitely frustrating to hear.
We'll take the high road and say it's for the better.
Yeah.
What did our parents teach us? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
People will not be disappointed when Breach of Trust comes out.
And as a kind of a thank you to do that, and of course there's a marketing aspect to this because you have to learn to market, is the first chapter of Breach of Trust, it's in here. It's in the back of Ransom.
Oh, nice.
So people are going to get to see, and it continues pretty quickly on from where the Body Man ended. I've kind of left and not giving away anything crazy because the Body Man's been out for, by the time this comes out too, it'll be getting close to almost 2 years. So that last chapter in the Body Man, Eli and Kat are getting a new assignment. They have a critical thing that pops up, and that's actually its own book. I've planned that book. I've started writing it, but I didn't get very far, and then it got shelved with just everything else with the writing and life and all that. The other thing that was happening is what is the catalyst for driving Breach of Trust. So you're gonna start off in the beginning of at the end of Ransom Daughter. You're gonna start off with where are we going? What's our introduction to what's happening with Breach of Trust?
Nice.
I feel like I owe that to people, I'm also yeah, I'm excited to be able to let people get the taste of what's going on. What's going on with the body man? What's he been up to this past year and a half when no one's got to see, after the drum roll where he went. So, but yeah, so it's a fun story. Breach of Trust is a good one.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that I'm super excited to get out there with it is horrible because I know you love her too, but I want to see people read how I kill Ama. I mean, I've promoted that so much, and I like
I
I
know.
thought I came up with the most epic death for a human being, and just emotional and heartfelt and all this, and then it didn't get published, and I was like, God bless America. So, Ama, if you ever listen to this interview, I started a publishing company just so your death can be out there for
it can
everybody.
it can be in fiction.
Fictionally, she has
Fictionally.
two beautiful children
Yeah.
and a lovely husband named Jake, who I've actually got to meet. I haven't met her son. He was not at the concert, but I actually got to meet them all last year at a Shinedown concert, which was super. That was a super amazing experience. I talked to. I had just the benefit and all that's thanks to John Guarnieri, who have not been shy about giving John the thanks. John opened up the world of Shinedown for me for some book research and just an amazing time. I went to 8 shows last year, a bunch local here. I did about 2, 3, 4 shows in the Southeast, 2 shows in Texas, show in California, and a show in Wales, Cardiff, Wales. But I got to see kind of like, I got to see how the fudge was made, how I got to see behind the curtain and
Yeah.
see, what the Wizard of Oz is really, what he's really like. And it
Sure.
was just a great experience. But in getting to do that, I got to obviously interact with the band and the crew, especially the crew that works. Stage crew is just amazing. But before one of the shows that Ama was going to, I went and talked to the drummer Barry, who's about as great of a guy as you're going to meet in this life. He's really he's a writer himself. You just can't say enough good things about Barry. And he gives out at the end of the shows. He gives out drumsticks. He'll go to the end of the stage and just start flinging drumstick and handing them or whatever. And he actually gave my son a set of drumsticks after one of the shows, and it's just a cool thing. And so I had enough rapport with him at that point that I went up to him and we were talking before the show, and I said, "Hey, I got a friend coming. She's a writer. Her and her daughter are super fans, and her daughter's was my daughter's age actually." I said, "Any chance I can get a set of drumsticks for her? I don't want drumsticks, but I want her daughter to have drumsticks." And he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'll take care of you, no problem." I didn't think about it again. Well, during the show, Shinedown gets to a spot where Simple Man is played. And when Simple Man's played, it's just Brent and Zach up there. So Eric, the bassist, and Barry, the drummer, come off stage. So they're getting ready to play Simple Man, and I was on stage right near the bassist setup where his kid is, and the guys start coming off stage, and Barry comes off stage. I'm standing next to Ama, her daughter's there, her husband's there, and Barry comes right over to Ama's daughter and hands her the drumsticks, and then walks right back off to the side of the stage. And I caught the tail end of my phone as I realized what he was doing, and I, of course, got the video. But that little girl was jumping up and down, and Ama was super excited. And just as a dad with a daughter, man, Barry, I've told him before, but like one of the coolest moments as a parent to
Yeah.
see that happen.
Crushed it.
For him to do that during the show, that's a memory that little girl will have the rest of her life, especially when it's her favorite band
Yeah.
and her favorite drummer doing it. And him to come off stage and give her a drumsticks was
Pretty cool.
really flippin' cool. It was very,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing experience.
Well, Eric, man, thanks for coming on tonight and doing this. I know you had a busy schedule, and I'm looking forward to getting Ransomed Daughter. Of course, I've read it, but I can't wait to see the final product, and of course, get that first chapter of Breach of Trust in there because it's
Yeah,
been a while.
you didn't get it. you didn't get it yet. So you
No,
got the
and it's been a while since I've read Breach of Trust. So I get kind of a double dip here.
well, I completely different chapter from what you read too. I changed it
Okay.
all around. So yeah, you're not getting what you saw a year plus ago, year and a half, whatever that
Yeah,
was. So.
it's been a while.
Well, Jeff, thank you for having me on. Thank
Yes,
you for
sir.
what you do for having this podcast as a platform for authors and for people that need to be highlighted. I think I'm one of your biggest fans. I'm encouraging you and
Thanks,
support
man.
you in your writing endeavors, and I look forward to big things happening.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.